of this meeting, together with my colleague Yasmin, who is the IT manager of the meeting. And I will give her the floor without further ado to explain the technical issues related to the seminar. Yasmin, up to you.
So hi everyone. Just a minute, please. Okay, perfect. So a few technicalities for this meeting, as we have many options, so everyone can join. First, we have interpretation for the speakers we will have a presentation in Spanish during this session. And so when this time comes, for the person that want to hear it in English, you will need to go under interpretation. So on Zoom, you have a menu that is at the bottom of Zoom, and you have various icons. One of them is interpretation, and if you click on it, you have various options. So off, it's where we are now. Then you can choose English, Spanish, or French. So if you want to hear in English, you go under English. Then we also have captioning available for this session. So for this, again, you just go on the Zoom menu at the bottom and you have closed captioning. You just click on it and it will activate them so you can see the captioning. And lastly, we have sign interpreter as well. So if you want to see the sign interpreter as your main video, you need to click on the video and pin it so you can see it more clearly and not just as a small video. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue. Alors juste quelques petites technicalités. Nous avons l'interprétation qui est disponible durant ce webinaire. Donc pour pouvoir le choisir, vous avez le menu Zoom qui est en bas de Zoom. Vous avez plusieurs petits icônes qui sont ici. Vous sélectionnez celui qui est interprétation et vous sélectionnez la langue française afin d'entendre l'interprétation en français. Pour les sous-titrages, ils sont également disponibles en français, mais pour cela, je vais vous envoyer un lien sur le chat qui s'appelle Stream Text, que vous devrez cliquer sur celui-ci, qui vous renverra sur une page internet où vous pourrez choisir en fait la langue des sous-titres que vous désirez. Buenos días a todos en este webinar. Hoy día tenemos la posibilidad de entender este webinar en español. Si necesitan la interpretación, tienen el menú Zoom que está abajo de Zoom. Tienes que clicar en el interpretación y escoger el channel en español durante toda la presentación. Si necesitan subtítulos en español también es también posible, pero para eso tienen que ir en el chat. Voy a mandar un stream text y si van ahí después se puede escoger los subtítulos español. Y tenemos también la última opción, que es la lengua de señas, y si necesitan verla mejor, pueden clicar en la video y ponerla fija, así la ven más grande. That's it for me. Back to you, Camelia.
All right, thank you. So welcome, bienvenidos.
Yes. Thank you very much, Yasmin. The interpreters were not translating. I saw your hands because Yasmin is speaking in 3 languages. So as of now, interpreters will translate. We try to make it as comprehensive as possible. 2 small things before I hand over to Jose, who is the real moderator of the meeting, the Chief Executive Officer of the World Blind Union. One thing, I see that you're using already chat. Please use chat as much as you can. After the meeting, we will make available all the exchanges on the chat through email to the organizer, the World Blind Union, and they can distribute it to all of you or to the interested people. So use the chat for small comments, to say hello, but also to exchange practical and other information and comments you will not be able to make in the meeting. Given the limited time, it's a very valuable source after the meeting of the comments. And last thing, if you want to speak, please raise your hand through Zoom. There is a blue hand button, and I will make sure that I inform the moderator about your wish to speak or ask your questions through the Zoom chat, which I will be monitoring. With this, Jose, Thank you very much once again for the confidence to the Geneva Human Rights Platform, and up to you for the substantive part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, bienvenue, bienvenidos. It is with great pleasure on behalf of the World Blind Union family to welcome everyone to this webinar, where we will be talking about a report that has been produced by the World Blind Union, Amplifying Voices, Our Life, Our Say. But even more important, we hope that this space is the first of a series of webinars and exchange platforms where we can talk and discuss more around what COVID-19 has implied to people with disabilities, and also what can we do in this new reconstruction phase that some of the countries around the world are going in the coming months. We really hope that this webinar and the agenda is of interest to everyone. And throughout the webinar, I will be sharing different informations that we think may be important or relevant to those who are joining. You have received the agenda. I will first like to extend a sincere appreciation to all the panelists that we have today. All are very busy persons, but they have willing to participate in this webinar, so it's very much appreciated. And with no further ado, let me invite and introduce to everyone the WBU president, Dr. Frederick Schroeder, for his opening remarks around the importance of our report, the role of our organization, the World Blind Union. Before I do that, I just want to quickly thank all our partners that have contributed to the elaboration of this report. Of course, the WBU team for making this possible, the Geneva Academy for the technical support during this webinar, and even more important, CBM Global Disability Inclusion for the financial and technical support provided in order to make this report and webinar possible. Again, thanks everyone, and Dr. Schroeder, the floor is yours for opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose, and welcome to everyone who is participating in this webinar. As you know, the World Blind Union represents the interests of the estimated 253 million blind and partially sighted people around the world. We represent a lot of people, and we are people who share certain common characteristics beyond just the obvious of no or limited sight. And that is, we are a marginalized people. I think that the history of marginalizing blind and partially sighted people is one that is well documented, but it really comes down to not being considered at the planning phase or taken seriously, if you will, as governments plan. I'm sorry, my phone keeps talking in my ear and it's just distracting me. So, but anyway, not being taken seriously as government plans. And so what happens is when there are emergencies, it could be refugees fleeing a conflict area. It could be a natural disaster. It could be, in this case, a worldwide pandemic. The reaction tends to be, we need to take care of the majority first, and then later we'll get around to addressing your needs. But if your needs relate to health and safety for blind and partially sighted people, getting around to our needs later puts people's lives at risk. I don't mean to over-dramatize this, but I will say, as long as we wait for others to intervene on our behalf, we will not have adequate responses, be they to natural disasters, refugees, pandemics, or other significant emergencies that arise. This is something we have to advocate for ourselves. Or said another way, we need to work collectively to amplify our voices. And so I'm very pleased that all of you have joined us, and I will turn it back to Jose.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Schroeder. Thanks for your remarks. Definitely, the work ahead of us is enormous, but we recognize that we have to start to do something. And I think a lot of organizations of persons with disabilities and their partners around the world have already developed a lot of resources and different actions around ensuring that people with disabilities are included throughout this pandemic. I was just checking the chat box, and I should say that we have tried our best to make this webinar as inclusive as possible, not only having sign language interpretation and closed captioning, but also because we really want to reach out to as many people as possible. We have thought of having this webinar in English, French, and Spanish. I know that there may be some challenges around those connecting into the Spanish channel, but we will try to fix those problems quickly. Our technical team in Geneva is working hard to ensure that everybody gets the same information and gets the possibility to participate actively in this webinar. So our apologies if there is any delay. We are working on that, and we will shortly get everything solved. So again, thanks, Dr. Schroeder, for your brief opening remarks. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the people that had participated in our global survey around COVID-19. For those who had the chance to read the report that is also in different accessible formats and in different languages available on our website, you have seen that this report is actually the compilation of different voices around the world from our community in terms of what we are experiencing around COVID-19 and how difficult has been to obtain different services from governments around the world. So the report has definitely tried at least to ensure that those voices have been heard, and not only around the solution, not only around the problems that people have encountered in the last 8 or 6 months of this pandemic, but also what had been the solutions that people have discovered in trying to solve those challenges that we have faced as a community of persons with disabilities. But I will not speak more about the report because we will later on have a specific segment around the report itself. But I just want to remind everyone that the report is available on our website in different languages and in different accessible format. We hope that you can use it in different ways and for your daily advocacy activity that we know is incredibly important to ensure that global transformation reach out to those living in different areas around the world, and actually we transform global achievements into local actions and activities. So let me now introduce you Ms. Maria Soledad Cisterna Reyes. First of all, a very good friend of WBU, a person who has supported the organization for many years now. She is now the UN Special Envoy on Disability and Accessibility under the Secretary General of the United Nations. She is based in Chile, and we have asked her to give us a short speech, a brief presentation around how to support people with disabilities in this pandemic, and what are basically the recommendations for governments and organizations of persons with disabilities in supporting the full inclusion of blind and partially sighted people and persons with disabilities in general. As Jasmine explained in the beginning, this presentation will be in Spanish, so we will now give 1 or 2 minutes for those who are in the main channel, the channel that we are using now, and want to hear Maria Soledad's presentation in English. You now have to go to the menu that is in the bottom of the Zoom application, and you will there find different icons. One of them is interpretation. If you click on the interpretation icon, you will find different channels. The first one is the one that we are using now, but if you keep scrolling down, you will find English, Spanish, and French, and you will be able to listen to Maria Soledad's presentation in the language that you prefer. So as I speak, I hope you are managing to get to the menu and switch channel in order to listen to Maria Soledad's presentation. Maria Soledad, thank you for joining us. Thanks for always being so supportive of our work. We know that you have developed a incredibly long experience around promoting people with disabilities, always ensuring that organizations of persons with disabilities are at the front of the discussions, both global and nationally. So Maria Soledad, thank you very much for joining again, and the floor is yours. Gracias y adelante, María Soledad.
Muchas gracias, José. En primer lugar, quiero agradecer a la Unión Mundial de Ciegos por la invitación que me ha cursado para participar en este importante seminario, donde se van a entregar los resultados de un valioso estudio que leí y me ha parecido tremendamente relevante. También quiero reconocer, y esto hay que subrayarlo, porque un debate mundial es el tema del multilingüismo, y no siempre eso es una realidad, y me complace que la Unión Mundial de Ciegos tenga la visión del multilingüismo para que los mensajes lleguen a todas las personas en distintos lugares del mundo. Así que agradezco esto, y bueno, comienzo mi presentación. Esta la he dividido en 3 partes, en logros, en desafíos y recomendaciones generales, y desafíos específicos en accesibilidad. ¿Por qué empiezo con los logros? Porque en general tendemos a ver que no podemos alcanzar ciertos estándares de cumplimiento de derechos humanos y libertades fundamentales durante la pandemia, lo cual es una realidad. Pero dentro de ese marco, por ejemplo, un primer logro de la sociedad civil fue visibilizar una temática que era trascendente, estoy hablando en marzo, en abril de este año, que era el derecho a la vida de las personas con discapacidad, porque habían denuncias.
Maria, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Camilla. We just need to change the channel of the interpretation. Just a second, please. So, please, the interpreters from Spanish. Okay, somebody needs to translate in English, please, from Spanish. From Spanish to English. So please go to the English channel and translate from Spanish to English on the English channel. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, please go. I'm sorry. It was just a change of channels. Go ahead.
Can I follow?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Bueno, yo no sé, pero en qué parte quedaron, pero voy a comenzar entonces la primera parte donde hablo de los logros, ¿ya? Porque tendemos a ver una visión un poco oscura, ¿no? En relación. José, ¿pueden entender o no? ¿O hay un problema con la interpretación?
Yeah, so, un segundo, María Soledad, un segundo.
Yeah.
Perdón. So my apologies again, we are just experiencing some difficulties with the interpretation. I will request our technical team in Geneva to confirm, and we know that it's not easy. We have prioritized this opportunity to have different languages available. Technology is always something that we do not fully control. So I would just like to receive a confirmation from the technical team in Geneva that the interpretation is working well and participants are in the right channel. And then we can continue with Maria Soledad's presentation. Jasmine or Camille, can you confirm that we are fixing or that we have fixed the problem around interpretation?
Yes, I mean, yes, it was just about channels. So now Yasmin will explain. Go ahead.
Right. So
yes, we're very sorry for this little issue. The people went correctly on the English channel, but they could not hear the interpretation. I did the test as well, and it was a bit weird. So just to check before we start again. I'm sorry about that. So Jackie, could you please unmute yourself and just speak on the English channel to see if we can hear you clearly. Okay, sorry, can you speak again?
No, okay.
Okay, I can hear you, but then I can hear also the main channel if I muted it, so I don't know why. I'm very sorry, it's the first time we have this trouble, so I don't know. Can we, are you using, Jackie, a microphone or just a headphone or? Okay, so maybe. Okay, so yeah, there is a problem, but I don't know what.
Right. So allow me to propose. Allow me to propose the following, Jasmine.
Valentina, maybe if you could
go on the English channel to see.
So Jasmine, let me propose
Jackie,
the following.
could you speak again, please? Just make a small speech. Okay, yes. Okay, so apparently it's working. Let me we'll try again. Maybe you can go ahead and try again and see if it works. So, María, si puedes de nuevo empezar su presentación, así puedo ver si funciona todo bien en el channel en inglés.
Ok, entonces comienzo para ver si funciona. Bueno, lo primero que dije es que agradecía a la Unión Mundial de Ciegos por la invitación que me ha hecho a esta importante actividad donde se lanza un estudio de mucha relevancia, el cual leí y me parece muy importante. En segundo lugar, dije que el multilingüismo era un gran tema dentro de las Naciones Unidas y la defensa de este multilingüismo, y por esa razón valoro que la Unión Mundial de Ciegos se haya ocupado de colocar distintos idiomas para poder llegar a la mayor cantidad de personas en el mundo. ¿Se entiende? ¿Se traduce o no?
No, apparently we still have some
Yeah,
issues
I'm very
with the
sorry.
language. So
We have the
no
same
worries.
issue.
We will do the following. We will
How do you want
go
to
to the
proceed,
next
Jose?
presentation until you fix the problem with the interpretation. My apologies, Maria Soledad, for this inconvenience.
Don't worry.
We are committed to solve it quickly. Give us just a couple of minutes.
Just say, no problem. If you prefer, I can present in English.
Yes.
But it's not sure the very good English, but I try to present in English. First
If this is not a problem for you, I think this will solve the whole story, because we don't need to change the channel and there'll be translation in Spanish like before. Can you continue in English?
Okay.
Okay.
First of all, I congratulate World Blind Union for the invitation to participate in this important event with the study that I consider important conclusions, very useful for the life in disabilities and guideline for the work of states members of United Nations. Well, I would like to tell that many persons with disabilities face many difficulties in relation to COVID-19, the use of the hospitals, the exercise of human rights during the pandemic are very, very difficult. But I would like to introduce my presentation underlining the achievements of persons with disabilities, because it is very important to put on a table the importance of the role of persons with disabilities. And in this line, the first achievement, in my opinion, is the recognition of the right of life for all persons with disabilities, in spite of the fact we received very serious news about difficulties in the exercise of the right to be in intensive care units, including mental health, including mechanical respirators to maintain the life. In this sense, the triad cannot discriminate on the basis on disability. For this reason, I prepared a statement. My second statement was in relation to the right of life of persons with disabilities, taking into account the different news that I received for the organization of persons with disabilities. Second achievement has been the possibility of inclusive and participatory response of persons with disabilities in relation to COVID-19, including the participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organization in cross-disciplinary working groups. And the results of these works has mean the instruction, the guidelines for public employees, police, judges, health workers, etc., in relation to the good attention for persons with disabilities. I would like to mention that persons with disabilities show their high possibilities of work with concrete proposal to the public system in relation to different topics, and including the claims about violation of human rights against persons with disabilities inside the environment of the attention at the hospitals and during the quarantines for the exercise of human rights, such as education, work, etc. The three achievements, in my opinion, has been to underline the role of local government in the pandemic, because they make the interaction between the citizens and the central government to canalize the needs and the perspective of human rights of persons with disabilities to get policies and other measures useful in this moment. And in spite of the fact these achievements, it is very important to note the challenges in this moment. For example, the Secretary General of United Nations prepared a policy brief about persons with disabilities, and he said persons with disability needs to put in a center of the discussion to prepare public policies. And he described some principles for these public policies. First, no discrimination. Second, intersectionality between persons with disability crossing Indian persons, older persons, boys, girls, women, migrant workers, etc. The cross-cut perspective of persons with disabilities in the evaluation and planification of public policies. Inclusive and full participation of persons with disabilities in the planification, elaboration, and evaluation of these public policies. Other aspect, accessibility. Full accessibility in different measures that the public policies adopt in relation to the pandemic. The principal aspect of data collection and statistics, because it's very important, the disaggregated for the kind of disability, sex, etc., to prepare public policies in good conditions, in scientific conditions. And finally, Secretary General mentioned accountability. Accountability, I am going to mention at the end of my presentation about this important topic. Second aspect is the methodology of inclusive and participatory response to the pandemic must be a methodology not only in relation to COVID-19, because it is necessary to put this way of work in other issues in the society. And it is important that the organization of persons with disabilities push about this topic, because it is important not forget the perspective of the full participation, I repeat, in the inclusive and participatory response in different issues in the society. And other important step in this line is the recognition, the legal and public policy recognition about the participation of persons with disabilities and their representatives organization in different aspects in the society, with binding effects in relation to the participation and in relation to the opinion and the contents that they express. In my opinion, these are the most important general challenges and recommendations. But in spite of the fact that these achievements and challenges, last year I participated in different activities about local governments. Last year in November was in South Africa, the General Congress of Local Governments. And in this opportunity, we prepare cabildo, I don't know, how can I say in English, cabildo, about the persons with disabilities and the need to put the pillar of inclusive accessibility in the work of local government. The relationship was with the International Unit of Local Government. They are working in human rights, in social development, and they are studying the possibility to put for all local governments around the world the pillar of inclusive accessibility. And in this line, I prepare a statement. I invite, where able, to share our perspective in relation to accessibility in the view of local governments. And in the line of accessibility, I would like to mention that accessibility is the most important cross-disciplinary figure in human rights on 21st century. This is pillar and bridge for the exercise of human rights and to fulfill social development, SDG. For this reason, it is important that to take into account accessibility is universal, because it's for persons with disabilities and for other groups in the society, such as older persons, pregnant women, boys and girls, etc., etc. And the different scopes of accessibility is huge, because it's in relation to physical space, transportation, information, communication, technology, procedure, process, product, services, etc. And I think that it is necessary to underline some recommendations in relation to this important and central aspect. And why is important and central aspect? Because the most important barrier for persons with disabilities in the attention at the hospital or during the quarantine has been accessibility. And the first recommendation is technology, very useful in different environments, for example, in telework, in some opportunities, in the interaction about persons with disabilities around the world, cannot be a barrier for persons with disabilities if the technology is not accessible in some cases. For example, very difficult we can accreditate in relation to education, distance education. The second aspect, currently we are working about smart cities with technology innovations, but it is important that these cities to be really smart to implement accessibility for the exercise of human rights for all persons with disabilities and or other persons. Without this condition, without the implementation of this human right, this smart city will not real smart. A third, the training of different public employees in different areas will be very important for the full implementation of accessibility, useful for the citizen, the common citizen, including citizens with disabilities. And in the other hand, the training for persons with disabilities in order to be in the same line to the society, increasing the knowledge to accessibility and technology to be useful in our daily come and go. In my third recommendation is to get the global governance through the multilateral political decision making in relation to reinforce the alliance among central governments, local governments, civil society of persons with disabilities, private sector, national institutions of human rights, and other stakeholders to catalyze the implementation of full accessibility in different environments, always in the line of the exercise of human rights, with a focus on CRPD and the implementation of the SDGs, many SDGs, at least 10 SDGs, and are in direct connection with accessibility. Other recommendation, global recommendation to create a global big data about accessibility during the pandemic and after the pandemic, to leave an important legacy to humanity, to better face other humanitarian emergencies in the future, and at the same time to help member states of United Nations to identify the connection among accessibility, human rights, and sustainable development.
Maria, I'm sorry to interrupt. May I ask you to kindly conclude in the interest of time? Sorry for this. You were interrupted so many times. I will offer you a coffee when you come to Geneva next time.
Okay. Let me, my last comment. It is important to understand that the accountability is not suspended by the pandemic. For this reason, states, parties, local governments, and civil society need to provide information for treaty bodies and for high-level political forum, Agenda 2030 agenda, in relation to the topic of accessibility. In spite of the fact the obligation is in relation to the state, to local government, it is necessary to count with the strong work of the organization of persons with disabilities, because they push the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria Soledad. Sorry for the inconvenience around the interpretation. We promised to do it better next time. But thanks for your presentation, always very important and relevant to listen what you have to say, especially in connecting people with disabilities, their representative organizations, and the different governments and local and global authorities. So as Camille mentioned, we are a bit behind schedule. So I will quickly turn over to Rosario Galarza. She has been participating in the elaboration of this report. She will present, and I kindly ask you, Rosario, if you can take no more than 10 minutes for your presentation, around what are the main elements and findings of this report. But before doing that, I really want to thank everyone who was involved in the elaboration of the report. First of all, those who responded to our survey. We have received more than 1,000 responses from more than 75 countries, and it's very and it's definitely very encouraging to have that feedback. I also want to thank the Yana Saheb, who has led the process of compiling this report. But I really want to highlight that together with Yana, Benjamin Dart has worked along with Yana and Maria Paula Cunha and Rosario to produce this report. But I really want to highlight that this report is not only the compilation of voices around the world, but also a good exercise of capacity building among WBU members. So Yana, together with Benjamin, they both have led a process through which we have heard WBU members. We have tried to provide feedback to WBU members, people around the world. And as a result of that is that we have today with us, Rosario Galarza, the representative of the Latin American Blind Union to the World Blind Union, one of our most active regional members, presenting this report. So Rosario, Thanks for participating. Sorry for asking you to present such long report in 10 minutes, but the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, Jose, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. And also, I would like to extend my appreciation to Dr. Schroeder to invite me to present the findings of this report on behalf of the Latin American Blind Union. Okay, I have a presentation, but I'm going to try to speed myself. Okay, first, in the first slide, we have the name of this report is Amplifying Voices, Our Life, Our Say, because this is experience of learning from COVID-19 through the experiences of blind and partially sighted persons across the world. And this is something that we need to do in order also to try to advocate for resilient strategies and all of them. Next slide, please. We have first the background of the study. As all of you know, COVID-19 pandemic has been exposing deep structural inequalities in society. And with this report, World Blind Union wanted to learn how it was particularly affecting the life of blind and partially sighted people. And in particular, World Blind Union wanted to know what were the main challenges at the beginning of the crisis, and also the resilience strategies and priorities for COVID-19 responses. This online survey was launched for 7 weeks from April to May, and it was launched in English, French, and Spanish. And the main objective of this study was to listen to the voices of blind and partially sighted people from all parts of the world and support World Blind Union regional and national members to amplify their voices and to have a response in this COVID-19 pandemic, and also to help in the advocacy work. And also, World Blind Union want to share this evidence collected as a contribution to the advocacy work of other representative organizations of persons with disability, as we collaboratively advocate for implementation of the CRPD and other key global frameworks, such as 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Work, the same time framework for disaster risk reduction, 2015 to 2030, the new urban agenda, and also another regional frameworks that we need to implement with this report. Next slide, please. We have now the overview of participants in the survey. We have 853 responses from blind and partially sighted people. We have 454 from women, 365 men, 3 identified as other, and 21 people prefer not to disclose the gender. And regarding of age, we have 98 people over 65 years old. For instance, we have like most of number between 45 to 65, 311 people aged 25 and 45, and 72 people under 25 years old. And in case of geographical regions, we have participants from 75 countries, from Africa, 13 countries, 14 from Asia, 7 from Asia Pacific, 21 from Europe, 14 Latin America, and 6 North America and the Caribbean. In case of rural and urban areas, 12% from rural areas and 87% from urban areas. Next slide, please. We have now the self-reported difficulties. These are self-reported using the Washington Group data sets. They are not intended to give or to provide like a diagnostic breakdown of people's impairment, but rather like a picture of functional difficulties that people face as reported by them. And also this helped us to get a sense of the population group at the moment in time during the pandemic, and analyze how their difficulties were interacting with the barriers they were facing. And difficulties most in seeing, but I think Some of the findings were that 1 in 8 people reported having some level of difficulty hearing, even if using a hearing aid. 18% of the respondents noted having at least one other significant level of difficulties from among the Washington group question asked. I think other things that maybe you can see in the whole report that I encourage you to read. Next slide, please. We have now the age challenge areas that were asked as main challenge for blind and visually impaired or blind and partially sighted persons. These areas were transportation and mobility, independence, autonomy and dignity, mental health and well-being, accessibility, health, physical distancing, which is really a big, big issue, attitudes, and inequitable policies and practices. And this data was thematically clustered following an analysis of the qualitative responses. And these things were not predetermined, but I mean, we found different main challenges. Maybe these challenges were not really new, but we need to know that these challenges were exacerbated during the pandemic. And next slide, please. We have now testimonies of these challenges. There are some quotes of people reporting the problems. For instance, I have asked for traveling on the metro. I cannot travel due to the lack of spaces for people who travel with a guide dog. So I have to go on foot because I am always told that I am a bother. I have explained to the staff on the metro, but they have no interest to solve it. I mean, this is one quote, and one also powerful quote for me is, as a blind woman, I seek to continue my life as autonomously and independently as possible, but current circumstances prevent us from being able to do so. This is something also that I would like to add myself, because it's very difficult to be a woman, independent, blind woman in this kind of pandemic. And this is the kind of testimonies that we have, and we'd like you to explore more in the whole report. Next slide, please. We have now the resilience strategies. I mean, they are not solutions itself that we are going to present as you as solutions. They are solutions that are reported from people who replied to the survey. Some of them maybe were not so effectively, some of them are more effectively, and some of them are practical, but this is the things that they found that could help us to cope, to deal with the pandemic. First, personal support networks, then getting online, then personal well-being, being practical, assistive technology, support from organizations of persons with disabilities, and also self-advocacy, creating or funding accessible solutions, and formal support. And definitely 43% of the respondents were able to access support, but through personal networks. The respondents, in order to have formal support network, were very, very, very few. And we want to, in this case, we want to share with you this kind of resilient strategies in order that maybe we can try to create like a community who can practice this. As Dr. Jordan mentioned, we need to be aware now of possible future disasters and also humanitarian emergencies. And we need to have this as a tool, like a useful strategies to cope with these issues. Next slide, please. I have the testimonies of some resilience strategies. For instance, the quote says, apart from my visual impairment, I have Down syndrome, and with the help of my mother, I am trying to overcome every day a challenge that she proposes to me. This is a very clear example of how they are using personal and familiar support. And also people who mentioned that they organize like a Zoom forum to maybe teach others how to use technology and also how to use the Facebook that Facebook, the conference on Facebook for Worldblind Union, in order to maybe improve the ability of orientation and mobility skills, especially in this pandemic. All the testimonies can be accessed in the report. Please, next slides. We have now some key recommendations produced in this report after compiling of the main challenges, all the testimonies, and also the resilience strategies. First is build back together, build back better. We don't need to build back isolated. We need to work as a team together, and we need to build back better. Disaster resilience, inclusive urban development, we need to advocate with a new urban agenda. Universal design, we need also to advocate for universal design. Accessibility technology, mental health and well-being, inclusive policies. We need to sit with the government in order to design inclusive policies. We are not going to expect that governments are going to design these inclusive policies for us. Awareness raising, capacity building, capacity development and group. And this recommendation came up directly from all the strategies and solutions provided by all the respondents in this survey. Well, now in the next slide is amplifying voices and taking action. How we need to use this report. I mean, this is not another report. This is, we need to engage Worldblind Union, regional and local members in using the evidence gathered in this report to inform and drive forward an agenda for change, while always remaining accountable to all our constituents. We also need to collaborate closely with other representative organizations of persons with disabilities. We are not going to work in silence. We need to work as a team with other organizations of persons with disabilities, also with governments, community, civil society, UN agency, private sector, to realize the CRPD, to realize also the CRPD and the SDGs in both in the humanitarian and the development settings during the pandemic and beyond, because we need to think about the recovery phase. And we need to strengthen the capacities of blind and partially sighted people to be able to effectively engage in advocacy, in policy analysis, in the recommendation areas that are part of this report. And we need to learn from one another on how we are responding to the COVID-19. What very important is this, because sometimes we think that we are going to cope just along with this situation, but we need to learn from one another. How others are responding, what are the strategies that they are using. And we need to share good practices and success stories of where they are working collectively, maybe building back better. And we see this report as a call to action, but not as an action based on what we think we should be doing, rather, but also a call of action that now what other persons are doing, because this report is gathering hundreds of responses that people, the blind and partially sighted people, are responding now, and they are informing us how they are doing, and we need to help them maybe to amplify these voices. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosario. Thank you for your great presentation, for making your presentation easy to understand, very, very easy to follow, especially with this very long report that we have produced. I would just like to say two words. Hearing your presentation, Rosario, you mentioned agenda for change and members of WBU being engaged. And for me, those are the two key pillars that play a significant role in what we expect out of this report as a Worldblind Union. We hope that this report can contribute to that agenda of systemic change, and that our members take this report, use it as a toolkit for being fully included in the discussion on how to build back better. Again, the report is available on our website. The presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, will also be available on our website. Thanks to DAISY Consortium, another WBU partner, the report is available in EPUB accessible format, in PDF, Word format, also accessible. It would be available in audio format for those who want to download it and listen to the full report. We also have executive summaries that are available in English, Spanish, and French. So please make use of this resource that we have put it together for WBU members. Let me now turn the microphone to our third speaker. And before I introduce you to our third speaker, I would like to say that this global report that we are launching today is one of the many actions that the World Blind Union has launched since the beginning of this pandemic. We have developed a call to action. We have promoted several ways of blind and partially sighted people being able to meet and discuss how they can solve different issues, daily problems around the autonomy in this time of pandemic. And also we have been contributing in the global discussion around how to include people with disabilities. We have been doing this with the support of many organizations, one of which is the CBM Global Disability Inclusion. And our next speaker is David Bainbridge, CBM Global Executive Director. WBU and CBM have been working together for several years now. And first of all, thanks, David, for being with us today. And always thanks for the CBM support to the different WBU activities. And we really want to hear from you. What are your reflections around how to support people with disability organizations in advocating for meaningful and inclusive participation? And what are the strategy for effective partnership between organizations like CBM and OPDs in ensuring that we are not left behind? Thank you, and the floor is yours, David.
Thank you very much, Jose. Can I firstly check my voice is working okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, David.
Yes, it's working, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you for this opportunity to share in this webinar. And I want to add my congratulations to WBU for this very important study. And it's been a real privilege for CBM Global to have been able to provide support to this. Firstly, allow me just to briefly introduce CBM Global Disability Inclusion. For those who are unaware, the former CBM International Federation made changes last year to allow different parts of the Federation to focus on their priorities, their areas of expertise, and a number of CBM's member associations agreed to form a new federated entity called CBM Global Disability Inclusion, and I'm their executive director. And we work alongside people with disabilities in the world's poorest places to break the cycle of poverty and disability, and to build inclusive communities where everyone can enjoy their human rights and fulfill their full potential. And we invest in long-term partnership with the disability movement, and we seek to multiply our impact by delivering a combination of inclusive community-based programs, advocacy, and providing inclusion advice to other organizations. And something, therefore, absolutely at the heart of our values and of our approach is seeking authentic partnership with organizations of persons with disabilities, OPDs. And we place working with the disability movement in the center of our work on programs, advocacy and advisory work. So I've been asked to respond to 3 questions today. And the first is this: what are the lessons learned for CBM Global in this time of pandemic in supporting OPDs? I have 5 key lessons to share. And the first is that we must actively listen and be flexible. And it was clear from the outset of the pandemic that much of the work for 2020 that had been planned with our partners, with OPDs in the different countries where we work, they of course had to be changed due to the disruptions and the dynamic nature of COVID-19. So we reached out immediately to our OPD partners, seeking to listen, to understand their changing situations, and underscoring our commitment to flexibility, ensuring that we could change direction to adapt programs based on the areas of work they were involved with. The second lesson was to actively engage with OPDs in emergency COVID interventions. We set up an internal task force across the Federation on our COVID response, and we funded a number of programs which are in most cases still ongoing. And these programs have included OPDs as key partners. It was vital for us that we ensured OPD partners were engaged right from the onset in concept and design discussions through to implementing, monitoring, and evaluation. So just one example, our program in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, is improving access to inclusive information and health services and the meeting of basic needs for those made most vulnerable due to COVID-19. And within this program, a Yogyakarta DPO is leading on a whole range of responsibilities, for example, market and vulnerability assessments, engaging in national cluster meetings, influencing of local and national policies, sensitizing of health workers on disability inclusion, producing accessible and inclusive materials for dissemination, and so on. And we now have real-time evaluations being prepared in order to capture learning and make further adjustments in the program approach as needed. So that active engagement has been absolutely foundational. The third lesson, building on that, is to make sure we are reaching those furthest behind. So key to program design is ensuring a comprehensive analysis and understanding of those who are most vulnerable to ensure no one is left behind in COVID-19 responses. So in the example I just gave, the Yogyakarta OPD is leading in the work of assessment and identifying those at community level who are most vulnerable. The fourth lesson is to amplify the advocacy messages of OPDs. We recognize from the onset of the pandemic that in our advocacy engagement, we needed to support and lend our voice to joint action that is led by the disability movement. So we supported the IDDC campaigns, which highlighted the discrimination that persons with disabilities were facing, and the campaign for accessibility of information, which the WBU study highlights as having been a critical concern. The fifth lesson is to support OPDs in gathering evidence. And we know that gathering data, evidence is hugely important during times of emergency, whether through rapid needs assessments, highlighting where there are gaps, such as the lack of accessible information, lack of access to services, and so on. And OPDs are the best placed in the community to work with their members to collect vital information, and we believe they should be supported to do so. Such data gathering must, of course, always be done ethically. We need to ensure the data collected is then used for future programming to support advocacy messaging and other interventions. And in our COVID-19 strategy as CBM Global, recognizing this need for data, we therefore arranged to fund this study undertaken by World Blind Union, and we feel very privileged to have been able to do so. So those are 5 lessons learnt on that first question of lessons learned from CBM Global in the time of pandemic in supporting OPDs. The second question is, in the reconstruction phase, will we need more active OPDs? We will need more active OPDs in ensuring no one is left behind. So what could be the role of organizations like CBM Global in achieving this goal? So I think firstly, we need to recognize in many countries that we're actually still in the emergency phase, and many of the restrictions that are in place continue to make life incredibly challenging for persons with disabilities. And the WBU study gives numerous examples of this. And we can, I think, expect shifts occurring from recovery phases back into lockdown and more emergency conditions, depending on the spikes that we will be witnessing with the pandemic in the future months. But in terms of a reconstruction, build back better approach, the WBU report has a very informative section on building back, as Rosario just summarized so clearly, covering key requirements such as mental health and well-being, universal design, inclusive policies, disaster resilience, and so on. And all of these really resonate with us in CBM Global. We see a key role for organizations such as ours to partner with OPDs in making these core requirements to building back better a reality. And this commitment can be pursued at all levels, at a global level, working with WBU and other global OPDs in supporting their secretariat and their members, through to national level work with national OPDs, and in local community-led action. We can support OPDs to hold duty bearers to account on the implementation of the CRPD. We can support them to engage with and feed into UN country-led initiatives on building back. And we keep hearing that there is much work to be done to ensure that the country-led initiatives by the United Nations and other agencies are truly disability inclusive. And finally, we can continue to help amplify voices at the global level for policy change, particularly the implementation of the SDGs. And we also know that with economies being affected the way they are by COVID-19, this can impact on future funds, future priorities for development aid. So this is also a key area to focus on and where we can support. Third question and final, I was asked to respond to. COVID-19 has shown how critical it is to have stronger OPDs operating at national, local levels in ensuring full inclusion of persons with disabilities. According to your view, what strategies can be developed between OPDs and disability inclusive development organizations in strengthening our partnerships? So on this aspect, we see three core components for realizing this strategy. The first is pursuing strong and equal partnerships through a localization agenda. And that means thinking through how we engage with OPDs that respects national and local agency, and that INGOs such as ours moves to playing a support role, not a lead role, in that partnership. The second is co-producing programs, materials, campaigns, and so on. And this means a shift from what may in the past have been tokenistic levels of participation between disability inclusive development organizations and OPDs, which we may have witnessed in the past. That needs to shift to one of true co-ownership in planning, designing, delivering programs and advocacy campaigns and beyond. And thirdly and finally, we need to establish mutual capacity building and mutual accountability. Learning is a two-way street. And in CBM Global, we are convinced that we need to see a paradigm shift from the so-called partnership models of old to this new way of working and partnering that really does pursue an equal partnership, mutuality, co-development of programs and campaigns and responses. So thank you again for the opportunity to share and to contribute to this very important study and webinar. Thank you. Back to you, Jose.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. if there are two words that I would take away from this webinar, particularly from your presentation, David, is mutual accountability and co-development. I think the role of organization of persons with disabilities and organizations working in the field of inclusive development, like CBM and many others, is definitely trying to be sure that we co-develop activities, actions, programs, and also that we are mutually accountable and that we work together in ensuring the right of people with disabilities. We have now, originally we have scheduled a presentation from the CRPD committee chairperson, Danlami Basharu. He was participating in the closing session of the CRPD committee. So I'm sure he has had some inconvenience, so I don't see him on the webinar now. It's also true that we are already running out of time, but I do really want to at least take two questions, one for Rosario and one for David, at least. We have received so many questions and it's very encouraging to have this level of participation. But I really want to at least use the next 2 or 3 minutes for one question for Rosario, and another one that I can see here that is being repeated by different people about the role of organizations like CBM. So Rosario, the question for you is what is the role of OPDs and blind organizations in promoting the right of people with disabilities? What is this report saying around the role of organization of persons with disabilities in promoting inclusion of persons with disabilities? Rosario, 1 minute, please. Thank you.
Okay. No, yes, I think this report mentioned that, I mean, the role is very important because we don't need to expect that governments can do some measures. Some of the governments did, but not all of them. But we need to learn from this pandemic to also advocate for being included in the preparedness, response, recovery plans for all disaster risk reduction, and also for humanitarian emergencies. And we need to start to work as a team, working with other organizations of persons with disabilities, not also blind and visually impaired, or not also blind and partially sighted, but we need to work together in order to build this community of good practices, in order to exchange good solutions, and also in order to share success stories about how we need to move forward to this next stage, which is the reactivating reconstruction. That's why we need to move forward, and we need to learn from our experiences, and also we need to have more knowledge about CRPD. We need to continue learning about other strategic frameworks such as SDGs and new urban age agenda and others. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosario. David, one question for you. You referred to data collection as one of the key elements. Can you tell us a little bit more about how CBM Global perceive the importance of data collection, and what are your views around partnering with OPDs in data collection strategy? 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Jose. Yeah, so in just 1 minute, we see this as absolutely foundational. As I mentioned earlier, the need for robust and disaggregated data that can be used for advocacy, for influencing and changing policies, but also in program design, in interventions, ensuring appropriate accessibility to health services, and so on and so on. So this is a key priority that we recognize, and it applies at all levels, from the grassroots, from the community level in collecting data, through to national data and up to the global level in obviously seeking to influence and support the progress with SDGs and CRPD compliance. So it's a huge priority. It's a challenge to ensure that we can see robust, solid data that can be used in the ways I've described, but it is a definite priority for CBM Global and an area to definitely be pursuing in partnership with the disability movement and with OPDs.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. And I can now see that Danlami Basharu has joined us for closing remarks. Thank you, Danlami, for joining. I know that you have been just participating in the closing session of the CRPD committee, and thanks for being with us today. Before I pass the floor over to you, Danlami, we will have more opportunities like these where WBU members and other people can participate, exchange. We are planning to have separate webinars where we will be covering different chapters of this report, because we think that this report is indeed a great resource for WBU members. So expect more to come soon in terms of how to unpack and use this report. But in order to close this excellent webinar and thanking all speakers for their great contributions, allow me to introduce to everyone another very good friend of WBU, a person who has been involved in WBU activities right since from the beginning, and now we have the privilege that he is serving as CRPD chairperson. Danlami Basharu, the floor is yours, and thank you for joining.
Danlami, you have to unmute yourself, please. Danlami, can you hear us?
Unmute.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. You can please go on.
Yeah. I was saying thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this webinar, and I'm so sorry that I joined late. I literally just finished the 23rd session of the CRPD. So I just have a few words for concluding remarks, and I realize, of course, that this is my own very constituency, so I'm very happy to be with you. The world is slowly emerging from a most devastating pandemic, of which the blindness community had its share of disasters and disappointments, with the international community of not being carried along and being left behind, contrary to the Sustainable Development Goals. The disability inclusive strategy itself had not did not seem to be being put into full effect, but definitely we have learned quite a lot of points from this the pandemic. In fact, we just adopted a statement on the pandemic in the CRPD, and I'd just like to share with you a few points from there. It has to do with persons with disabilities. We noted that the pandemic has really exacerbated the pre-existing exclusion and discrimination against persons with disabilities, both those living in their communities as well as those still in institutions. We also noted that access to education, health, and rehabilitation have become even more challenging, particularly for persons that are blind and visually impaired. And home studying has been very, very difficult for blind persons especially. And so we're looking to state governments to ensure that they implement measures to ensure that the respect for the rights of persons with disabilities and to equality and non-discrimination, the right to free and informed consent and access to justice, to receive treatment, including ventilators if required, and to freedom from exploitation, violence, and abuse, including sexual abuse, coercion, and all kinds of coercive treatment are avoided. We're also calling on governments to reinforce measures of deinstitutionalization of persons with disabilities, accelerating the release of persons whose provision of support in the community is ensured through family and or informal networks, and increasing financial resources to expand the support services in the community, and also to ensure that persons with disabilities still living in institutions can enjoy their rights to accessibility to information and communication by exploring different methods of communication that respect distancing measures. Overcoming all this, we expect that governments will really put in a lot of effort to make sure that the community of persons with disabilities are well served. We welcome, the CRPD welcomes any intervention from the World Blind Union, and definitely we would cooperate fully with the World Blind Union in all its activities. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Danlami. Thank you for your clarity in connecting all this work with the CRPD. We definitely need to continue ensuring that whatever we do is CRPD compliant and we follow those excellent principles that had been put it into the CRPD by many of our leaders. Again, thanks everyone for participating. Thanks to all the speakers. I really want to express a big thanks to WBU team, my team, for working so hard to make this webinar possible. Thanks to CBM Global. Thanks to the Geneva Academy for the technical support. Thanks to DAISY Consortium for helping us in making this report available in different accessible formats. Again, we will be having more of this type of webinars to continue discussing this report. And I just want to wish all the best for everyone in this difficult time. Organization of Persons with Disabilities, we need to continue doing our work. Without our active role, people with disabilities will continue facing different type of discriminations. Thanks everyone, have a good rest of the day and we will see you soon. Thank you, bye.
Thank you very much to all, also from us, and we apologize once again for the small technical issues. It was complicated to change languages, but Jose, Terry, and others, thank you for your hard work and confidence. Next time we will do better. Thanks to our interpreters, Corey, Valentina, Wendy, Robert, Jackie, my colleagues Yasmin and Tatiana. And just to remind you that the whole chat will be compiled and we will send you the whole chat back to you, Jose, and your team, and you can distribute it, and there is the closed captioning. So once again, not a word in no language will be lost, and I hope to see you very soon back again. Thank you very much, and once again, bravo for this very, very rich and successful report. We hope this will change for the good, the world we live in. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.